So, we finally got a Nintendo Direct last Friday. We got a ton of new gaming news, as well as some controversial new Amiibo announcements, and mainly this controversy is actually due to the pricing. And to be clear, this video isn't necessarily in defense of the new pricing, especially surrounding the Kirby Amiibo or even the Samus and Silux Amiibo. Although I think the argument could be made that, especially for the Samus and Silux Amiibo, these are much more detailed than the figures when they were launched back in 2015. And I should know, I've been collecting Amiibo since 2015. I have been collecting Amiibo since they were $5 at Five Below, and no one could get any. So, this is specifically more so in the defense of the pricing of the Super Mario Galaxy Amiibo and the Samus Viola, that is the motorcycle Amiibo, here in the United States. Now, the story around these Amiibo seems to be centered around apparent Nintendo greed, but I think the new Mario and Rosalina Galaxy Amiibo aren't necessarily representative of that apparent greed, and I actually have evidence to support this. Let's journey back to 2017. This was the initial release date of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and the original Nintendo Switch system. 2017, back when they were so overjoyed that Nintendo had to sell things to us at a good price because they were quote unquote desperate. And with that pricing, the pricing was better back then too. Amiibos were always $12 and now they're $40 to $50 even, right? Or were they always that cheap? Well, let's look back to another much larger Amiibo, releasing on March 23rd, 2018. I'm of course talking about the giant Detective Pikachu Amiibo. It released in Japan for 3,200 yen, which at the time equated to $30.49 USD. In Canada, it was a $39.99 release, equating once again around the $30 USD mark, so we had price parity across all regions. Let's keep this in mind as we move forward. Now, as I mentioned, the Detective Pikachu Amiibo is a significantly larger Amiibo than their Super Smash Bros. Counterpart, coming in at well over twice the height and again some in width. It's worth noting still that at the time, there was a lot of back and forth if $30 was worth it for a simple Amiibo figure, and there are some people saying that it was worth it due to the increased material costs, but others were less impressed, saying that $30 was still a ridiculous price for an Amiibo. However, despite these arguments, the so-called Nintendo greed hardly if ever was brought up, again due to the increased size and material costs. Now, we can flash forward to just a few days ago, on September 12th, 2025, when we got our Nintendo Direct. In that Nintendo Direct, as I mentioned, we got tons of Amiibo news, and this led to some controversy within the Nintendo fanbase. Later that day, we received pricing for the new Amiibo. The Samus and Silux Amiibo is coming in at $30, and the Kirby Air Riders Amiibo are coming in at a whopping $50. But the Galaxy Amiibo and the Samus Motorcycle Amiibo are somewhere in the middle at $40 USD. Now obviously that's quite the pricing range, right? And with apparent greed from Nintendo, it seems like that's the only answer there can be, but what's the real story here? Well, to start off with the Amiibo, similar to the Detective Pikachu Amiibo of the past, these are very large and, in my opinion, have wonderful detail. They look great. They provide significantly more detail, in fact, than that of the base Rosalina and Mario Amiibo that retailed at $12 and then $15 here in the US in both the Super Smash Bros. Series and the Mario series Amiibo. So, what gives though? $40 is still $10 higher than Detective Pikachu Amiibo, right? Well, let's take a look at international pricing compared to what we saw before. And remember what I said earlier. For the Detective Pikachu Amiibo release, we had price parity across all regions. That means each region's pricing was similar. We had $30 equivalent in Canada, $30 equivalent in the US, $30 equivalent in Japan. Now, there's some differences here. Now, we see Canada's pricing for the new Super Mario Galaxy Amiibo come in at $39.99 Canadian, and this should sound fairly familiar. We actually see that this is the same price as the Detective Pikachu Amiibo of 2018, and that means that it is still around $30 USD. Now, this also applies for the Samus Motorcycle Amiibo in Canada, so that is also another $39.99 Canadian or $30 USD. Now, we also saw Japan come out with their pricing today, and they have the Galaxy Amiibo listed at 4,000 yen And this is actually a price decrease from the Detective Pikachu Amiibo at $27.31 USD. And the Samus Motorcycle Amiibo is even lower, coming in at 3,500 yen or 23.90 USD. That is about $24. Now, it's worth noting that the Japanese currency right now is facing a lot of turmoil and trouble, so the weakened yen could be a result of some of these pricing, but still, I believe even regardless of that, the pricing would be at about $30 USD. And with that being said, the only conclusion that I can realistically have given price parity in other regions is that these $40 USD amiibo were supposed to be $30. However, here in the US, we've had tariffs coming into play much more often, and like many other things in the Nintendo sphere, the price was raised as a result. So the answer is, in fact, a little bit more complex in this case than simple quote-unquote Nintendo greed in these specific cases. That is, the Super Mario Galaxy Amiibo and the Samus Motorcycle Amiibo. But in fact, even with the Kirby Air Rider Amiibo, the Canadian pre-order comes in at $55 Canadian. And when adjusting, that comes to around $40 USD. And in Japan, these same Kirby Air Rider Amiibo come in at 6,600 yen. Now this sounds super expensive, but in reality it converts to $45 USD. So this leaves yet another $5 to $10 markup due to potential tariffs. And although there's still tariff markups, the US price even without that would still be a $10 increase on the former most expensive amiibos, so I believe greed is an understandable accusation here. You could say that the $10 tariff markup is too much and Nintendo should just absorb it. And to that I say there were very few companies that are willing to absorb tariffs. And 9.5 times out of 10, they'll be passed on to us, that is, the US consumer. And just to be clear, this isn't me saying that Nintendo should pass on the cost to us, it's just me saying if none of the other companies are doing it, why would Nintendo feel inclined to absorb the tariff costs? It's just not realistic. This isn't necessarily just a Nintendo thing, it's more a current economic climate thing, and I think we need to do more to explain that fact. But Nintendo greed, huh? I think that would make for another interesting video. I hope you guys enjoyed this. It's a little bit of an impromptu video because it just popped into my head, but feel free to like or comment or subscribe and all that jazz, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.